Heleen, welcome to Mentor Moments. I have been really looking forward to our conversation. And just to introduce you to our community, you are from an industrial psychology background and you have been working with leaders and teams since 2007. And in 2019, you started Credo Growth, which is an incredible organization. I see, the posts and the work that you do. I mean, your mission is to develop high-performing teams, particularly focused in the tech and manufacturing space, with the values of connection, performance, engagement. And I know you work with some really front-running organizations like Vega Americas, Mercedes, Entrepreneur, EO organizations. So, it's really great to have you here. And you also published Ditch Mediocrity in 2021, and that's been quite a journey with all your lessons learned.
Yeah, I have. And first of all, thanks for having me. I'm quite excited for our chat today. But yeah, that sums me up in my professional world quite well.
Great. And I know that you are one step ahead of me in terms of being a free diver and going into the cold Nordic Sea. I just started ice baths. So I have much respect for anyone who can do that.
Yeah, so, I think most of my friends and clients who hear that I swim in the Nordic Sea just look at me going like, "Are you mad?" Because it's cold, but it's amazing and I love it, and it's part of my daily routine, and it's great. So
that's incredible. One day I'll be in that sea.
When you come to Cape Town, I'll take you.
Yes, excellent. Yeah. Heleen, I think we're talking about such a important topic is leadership in terms of remote teams, remote working, and this is a phenomena that has really just exploded, and particularly since COVID. I mean, I was just doing some research around it, and our labs actually did the survey, and they said 56% of global companies are allowing remote work, and 16% of global companies are fully remote. I mean, those are really, if you consider where we were even 6 years ago, I mean, that is really just starting to take off. Yeah, and I know I have a remote team, and it really has been, I mean, I've got a smaller team, but it really there's a whole different way of managing and leading a team. I mean, there's benefits to obviously not having huge infrastructure and building costs, but there's also a lot of challenges in terms of, keeping that human connection, keeping communication, keeping teams on track. So, this is really prevalent, and I'm looking forward to us just like tapping into your wisdom around this and working with these remote teams.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see how much wisdom I can share.
I know you have a lot.
Yeah, it goes. But yeah, it's you're absolutely right. It's a big shift from how people are used to working. Of course, everyone knows that. And it's interesting you say, of course, you save on the office that you don't have to pay rent for or ownership for. You save on parking and all of those things. But I just want to add that contrary to the popular belief of all the savings that you are doing because of remote work, I fundamentally believe it's actually costs more. Yes, and we can unpack that a little bit today. And it costs more if you want to have engaged teams, because then you also need to plan a little bit around how do you get people together, how do you create connection, how do you work through challenging periods of a team, and those things unfortunately takes investment. So yes, it's savings on the one. But also there's I almost say to people, if they are willing to go into remote work, they need to look at the financial aspect as well. Because where you save money, you also then need to spend money again on other stuff. But yeah,
definitely.
It's a big shift. And I think you mentioned 16% is fully remote, and that's going to grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously for organizations, they get the benefit of having talent globally.
Yes, exactly.
So it's also created an interesting dynamic. So, I mean, and I'm going to just share my personal, because I think this question ties into it. I used to have my team in my office with me, and we had this engagement, and then all of a sudden, we went with COVID, we went into the remote working, and it kind of evolved into a remote team. And I must say, I've had to really shift my own mindset around how do I build trust with my team? How do I, and this is the question, is what is someone doing when you don't have line of sight to them? And that is important on both sides, the leader and obviously the people who are doing remote work. What have you found sort of around this and how you can really instill that sense of trust?
So it's actually interesting because when there isn't, I want to start on the negative side first, when there isn't trust in a team, when people don't trust one another in terms of their peers, or when they don't trust their leader, or when the leader doesn't trust the team, what unfortunately starts to happen is there's an assumption of negative intent. So then you start looking at your colleagues or your leader or the people that report into you, and you always assume the worst of them. You assume that something wasn't done is because they're lazy or they were doing other stuff. You assume that someone is not giving you something because they're trying to get ahead of you. Instead of the positive assumption that we would have if we know one another, if we can see one another work, we can see what's going on the other person's plate. So I think, first of all, trust, if you think of, and I'm obsessed, Patrick Lencioni, I'm obsessed about his work, but if you take the 5 dysfunctions of a team model, the basic foundation is trust. And whether you in person, in office, or whether you are a remote team or a half remote team, a hybrid team, it doesn't matter. You need that foundation of trust. And that level of foundational trust, I'm not talking about operational trust in terms of I trust you to execute on. We're talking about vulnerability-based trust.
Yes.
And that means I can trust you because I understand you. I know who you are. I have a sense of your personality. I have a sense of how to communicate with you. I have a sense of what triggers you, what you enjoy doing. And remote work, unfortunately, has removed that because we don't have coffee cooler or water cooler conversations anymore.
Yes.
Where, oh, what did you do this weekend? No, I went rock climbing. What? You do rock climbing?
Yes.
I would like to try it. Well, why don't you come with me? That's lost.
Yes.
And in order to build trust, you need to know the people that you work with. And if you don't do that, again, people assume negative intent, and then you're dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff.
Okay. It's definitely, because when you've got that personal relationship, as you said, you understand someone better.
Yeah.
And it takes me into my next question around, here's you're a leader, you've got this team sitting across the world, and you've got to give this vision and goals, and you've got to get buy into it. And that's really, because it's so fundamental. It puts people on the same page. And it's always better when you have people face to face and you can have that conversation, or you can have that dialogue. How do you recommend a remote team and a leader puts that in place?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is, and this is exactly why I say remote work is more expensive than in-person office work, because ideally you would have put a budget aside in order to get the whole team together for an annual strategy session. Even in a more ideal world, if you follow the scaling up methodology or if you follow the EOS methodology, I'm sure Mike Scott, who was one of your guests, would have spoken about those things. So ideally, you would then also have your quarterly check-in sessions with a team, and that's all in person. But reality is not everyone, unfortunately, has the budget in order to create space for remote team members to get together. And I think the first thing is everyone needs to understand exactly what is our 12-month initiative. What are we working towards? And that requires effort from the leader, because very often what we see happens is it's a quick Zoom call or a Teams call, and the leader goes, right, this is our strategy. Is everyone on board? Everyone knocks because I don't want to ask a question. I'm going to appear stupid, or people are going to think I know what I'm talking about, because I've got negative intent. I assume negative intent because I don't know my colleagues that well anymore. So now everyone just nods, and then the leader goes, but how did you not know this? This is part of our strategy. It's like, yeah, well, I didn't really quite understand it. So it really is about, the first step is making sure that you have brought the people in your team on a journey with you in terms of how did you get to the strategy if they are not part of the strategic session. And that is extremely important. And then to show them, how does that strategy how is that broken down into 12 months in initiative? And then to set those 90-day execution plans. And what then happens is people do it, and then they don't ever talk about it again, and then they only review it on the night in the quarterly session. Or the leader all of a sudden gets a fright and goes, oh my goodness, we are behind, and then talk about it. In a remote team setup is, to give you an example with us, we're also fully remote. Every Monday for an hour, that's all we talk about. Are our 90-day goals in progress? Where are they? Where are we stuck? It's got nothing to do with the daily whirlwind of tasks that happen. And that's every Monday. And the other days that we have our discussion, it's really about the daily operational stuff. So if you run a remote team, there's a bit of effort in creating structure for the team, that they know this meeting is about our strategic initiatives. This meeting is about all our operational stuff that we focus on. There's a great book, I don't know if you've ever read it, called 4 Disciplines of Execution, I think it is. Can't remember the author now. But it's also in terms of the strategy and the vision, making sure that everyone is on board, and that becomes the wildly important goal. And yes, you've got all your other stuff that you need to focus on, but that thing, if you achieve that, that's what causes promotions. That's what creates promotion, or that is what advances your career. If you're one of the employees or a leader needing to step up into a board role or those kind of things. And I think many times for remote teams, they get so stuck in the operational things, completely forget what is the actual initiative for this year that I am responsible for. That was a very lengthy answer. Sorry, I got carried away.
No, I think it's so pertinent, and it's so, and I've seen it. We've got someone. I look at working on the business, and then I have someone who's operational, and we try to put everything together in one meeting, and it was just. We defaulted to operations online, and we've had to split that out. I mean, that was a huge learning for me, because, as you said, the nods, but you get so frustrated because the nods are nods of okay, move on.
And the interesting thing is, for example, again, I harp on trust all the time, but if you don't have that trust as the foundation, where you don't have the willingness to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand, hold on, I'm not following, or can you repeat that? Because I think I understood it, I misunderstood. All those things are also vulnerability. So by the way, it's not I'm having a tough day, or this is what's happening at work. It's the ability to own up and go, I need help. So if people don't feel that they can do that, they are certainly not going to say in a meeting that, hold on, I agree with the strategy, or hold on, can I ask a challenging question? Why are we doing this versus this? And so your group, your teams, if you think about it, the collective IQ, the collective intelligence gets, now my Afrikaans is coming into play.
Diluted.
Diluted. I couldn't even come up with the word diluted. Your team intelligence is reduced because people are not willing to say what they are thinking. Because there's no trust. And that's when you get
exactly.
So if you ask a question as a leader, and this is maybe for your audience to also listen to, if you ask a question, everyone on board with this? Or are there any questions or any concerns? And you just get nods and go, yeah, all good, and no one says anything. That is down. your first indicator that there's no vulnerability-based trust in that team.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's the leader's fault, but you have a responsibility to create space, especially in remote world, to create space for people to get to know one another so that you can build that vulnerability-based trust.
It almost is having to almost go over and above, your usual. If you were in an office, you'd communicate in a far more organic way. You almost need to make more effort in terms of connecting with people.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because what we also see, and I see it in my own team, if we speak about different personality styles, some personality styles lean into being more on the emotive side. They naturally, when they start a meeting, they naturally ask, how are you? And, chit chat about that and things like that. And then you get other personality style, present company included. Well, the meeting opened up and like, okay, right, what's on the cards today? Like, not really anything, because I just want to get it done. So for those who are a little bit more on the driver or the analyzer style, in other personality types, it's the fiery red and the cool blue, or all of those things. It might feel extremely awkward for you to do it. But if you don't provide the structure and the time in your team meetings to do it, you're not going to do it. And that over time is going to reduce the team's performance. The high performance is going to go to dysfunctions. You might still achieve your targets and your goals, but your culture sucks. Because of that disconnect that people are experiencing.
It's very interesting. And I mean, I think it ties into the question around personality types. And I've certainly seen, I think there's some types that obviously gravitate to remote working. They're sort of introverted. They go into their space, they do their work. And then there's obviously the more sociable, where they want to have that connection, and it maybe is more challenging. How do you deal with different personality types? Do you adjust your leadership around that? Do you give additional support to those people who maybe not naturally used to working on their own?
So very true. Some people lend itself more to wanting to be in office, and others also lend themselves more to be vocal on Zoom, where let's stereotype quickly. If it's the very strong introvert, you don't even want to have their camera on. Mute button is always on, because it's kind of protecting the self. But there's something that we call situational leadership. Love that, and we also use that to set it up for leaders to understand how to use coaching as a leadership tool. And I think what is very important is, again, get to know your team members, understand that some people speak to think. And others need to think in order to speak. And if you ask me a question and I'm the latter, and I'm quiet after you've asked me a question, you know that you need to give me a few seconds, and I'm not going to give you an answer directly. But if you don't know about me, you are probably, as a leader, going to ask me the question, and you're going to give me 2 seconds, and I'm not answering, and then you're going to answer the question for me. And I see that so often.
Definitely.
It's not engaging. They're not talking. I ask a question and they quiet, and then no one says anything, and then I need to lean in, and then I observe. I'm like, you've only given them 2 seconds to think about your question.
I've seen that, and it's very much the cool blue, the analytical, and you almost need to give them something and give them time to let it and come up. And I'm the opposite. I'm kind of I think out my ideas. And some of them might not be, and I try and preface it to say I'm just sort of rolling with a couple of ideas here. Don't take it as I just wanted to get your feedback. But I know that style, it's interesting in a remote environment. Other people find it a little bit disconcerting because I'm just rolling out with these ideas, and other people like to have a more structured approach and take it in and think about how they want to respond. So. Absolutely. When you face to face, I guess you pick up the cues. When you're sitting remotely, it's not that obvious.
Yeah. And it's not obvious at all, because a lot of time people also look at themselves. Like, if you're talking, I'm standing like this the whole time because it's like, am I okay? Is my hair up? I mean, I'm doing it right now. So people miss the cues. And you miss, for example, if someone is nervous, they will fidget with their fingers, but you don't see their hands. So you can't see, like, hold on, I'm stepping on someone's toes here. You don't see that up.
Yes.
Even more why it's so important to actually get to know the people, get to know personalities, get to, like I said earlier, for leaders, it's also, we work with things that's called the hunger profile. Get to understand what motivates someone. Is it more structure? Is it more acknowledgement? Is it more environment? All of those kind of things is important.
Yes.
And I think what's, especially in the space that we are in, because of the remote work, we often have to do sessions, hybrid sessions or fully online sessions. And I was guilty of it because I can stand in front of a camera for 2 days in a row. It doesn't bother me. Yes, I feel like I have a relationship with my camera, but that's fine.
Yes.
But I can still deliver. But initially it was realizing that, hold on, some people need shorter interventions and breaks. And that's not because there's something wrong with them. But if you want them to be in full productivity, don't schedule a 4-hour meeting.
Yes.
Rather have shorter sessions with specific topics that is more structured. That kind of thing. And then you almost need to become like a team facilitator, create breakaway rooms where people can be in smaller groups, because in smaller groups, me as the introvert, I can voice my opinion. There's so many eyes on me. So there's so many different things that one needs to look at. It's like a whole new style.
And getting exactly. I mean, and we try. What we do is we bring our team together twice a year, and I even feel like that is not enough. I mean, I definitely feel between that 6-month gap, I feel like I want to see people face to face. I want to know what's happening in their world, that's just for us. That's what's financially feasible. But I mean, if I could, in an ideal world, I'd have it quarterly, bringing people together, because there's something that happens in that environment, and then we get back into a remote setting, and things actually flow so much better, because, as you said, the trust, the connection has been improved through that intervention.
No, absolutely. I can totally believe why things will flow better.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for those who are not able to get the team together, I think the responsibility is then to create these team sessions, structured, guided team sessions online, but have shorter. We work with some clients where we do monthly, for 12 months in a row. We do monthly sessions, but we do it for 2 hours, and for some clients we do it 3 hours, depending on what we do. But yeah, it's 2 hours a month or a monthly basis, and people it's structured, guided, facilitated sessions that we run. And the feedback that we get from baseline where we started versus where they are then afterwards is incredible. I just did a result because I'm doing a talk this afternoon where the ability to hold each other accountable has increased by 10%.
Wow.
That's huge for that small team. It is massive. Trust has increased with, I think it was something like 15%. In terms of, and this was a team that was about to fall apart.
Wow.
So you can do so much online.
Yes.
But it's committing to doing things online.
Yes. And how, I mean, the other thing is around accessibility, having remote leadership and being accessible to your team. And what does that look like? Because you're not in that physical space with your team.
Yeah, I think there's so much to learn from other leaders also that's leading massive global manufacturing like that around how they do it. But I can share a little bit of what I see and what we do. So yes, it is about making use of productivity tools like the we all know, Planner, Teams, Asana. I'm not so familiar with the G Suite stuff, but it is about working asynchronously, if I can call it that. Big good for Afrikaans girl. But I think what is extremely important is, and that's maybe not a direct answer to your question, but you as a leader taking on the learning how to coach as a leader, so that when people reach out to you, it's not they asking you how to do something and you saving them, you becoming the rescuer and doing it for them or telling them step by step. It's you taking on a coaching style. What is it that you want from me? Taking them through their own processing so that every time they do reach out to you, it's a learning opportunity for them, and not you just saying, oh, this is what you should do, and taking a shortcut. Because telling someone what to do and how to do is the shortcut. Coaching them is the correct way, but the longer process. So that's the first, is make yourself accessible, but make good use of the time when you are then accessible. It doesn't become a habit of people coming to you and asking you to solve their problems for them. Because I often work with people, and then they go, but my team doesn't solve problems. They don't think outside of the box. They don't come with solutions. And I'm like, okay, when they do come with challenges to you, what do you do? No, I tell them what to do. That's why.
And it's so easy to go into the telling mode. It's like, okay, well, I know it, and it's going into questioning mode. And it must be, I mean, I don't know if you've had teams where people have been inducted remotely, and that process.
No, absolutely. But that induction process and onboarding needs to be smooth, so that people already are excited about joining a team, even though I'm probably only going to once a year or once every 2 years meet my colleagues. So it needs to be smooth. There needs to be time to get to know your colleagues inside of that induction program. Process. And then the other thing about accessibility, and again, each team, each culture works quite differently, but is that whole topic around, are you allowed to email after hours and send team messages and things like that? And what we see work really well is when we create, also because you need to create psychological contracting around as a remote team. What we see work really well is where teams agree to say, you can email me and you can Teams me whenever you want, but I am taking my notifications off my phone. So when I look at my emails, it is my decision around when I look, if I look after hours, and then it's on me. And the reason why that works so well is because you've got some people who have kids. So in the middle of the day, they need to go and do school runs. Then the kid is going to have to go take the kid to the doctor. So, and they go, I'm not feeling guilty about doing this because I know if my kid went to bed, I'm quickly going to do all my work. And then if you then sit with the guilt of emailing someone, that's a lot of guilt to handle.
No, totally. And it's setting those, this is the interesting thing, because now there's, as you said, the work life is blurred. People have got other, and that's the benefit of remote working, is parents can do all of those things. But then it's, what is the rule around when we start and when we stop? So, I mean, I had a really interesting experience, and I actually try consciously not to, during weekends, not to get in touch with everyone. So there's some boundaries around that. And then a colleague, one of my reporting lines came to me and said to me, I was battling with a document and I spent the whole weekend on it. And she said to me, listen, if you're battling, I am really good to help you out during the weekend. Obviously, it's not every weekend, but, you can come to me during that time. So now we've contracted in terms of that, and we know what that means. And I thought, that's so interesting, because you are going to have times where maybe it's the exception and you've got a deadline. And what are those, how do you set up those sort of routines, how you contract psychologically? And I think some of the practical tips around that, because I think everyone's still grappling with that.
Yeah. So like I said, I think the one tip is, that certainly I enjoy it, is anyone can email whenever. But it's up to me whether I look at my email. And if I decided to open my email, I take on the responsibility of looking at it. But if I email, and the contracting is like that, as long as I don't expect a response back, because my response I can get back on Monday. So it's I'm allowed to send something whenever I want to, but I can't expect a response after hours, an immediate response, especially if it's over a weekend or something like that.
Yes.
But I think what is important is for a team to get together, whether it's online or in person, and literally answer the question, how are we going to work together? And get different people, to everyone in the room, to add into that, to say, okay, how are we going to work about emails? What are our rules around start time and finishing time, or do we not have that? There's no set guideline or rule book for every single company. You need to, with your team, with the type of industry that you are in, with the type of work that you need to identify what works for you. So there's no point in a 24-hour available call center to say we only work from 9 to 5.
Yes, you've got to be realistic.
So think about what type of work does your team do, and how can you then structure inside of that and let everyone decide together. And of course, you, the leader, can put some structures in that you needed for the business and to achieve goals. But let people weigh in to this accessibility works, and what they need and what they want and what other people need. Have those discussions, and I don't think that's happening a lot.
I think it's we're not conscious of it. We kind of are in this remote environment, and then when you hit up against a bump in the road, I guess that's where you get clarity around it. But obviously, what you'd prefer is not to have you'd prefer to have the rules of engagement before that, because then you're high performing. You become a high performing team, and everyone knows how to navigate. So, I mean, that's a really good point.
Those rules of engagement, or we call it a container, it's driven by psychological contracting. All of those things is so important. And even if you have a team that is now 2 years, 3 years into being an online team, you can still do it. It doesn't mean that you've missed the opportunity. You haven't done it when the team was formed. Any time is a good time to have a psychological to start.
I know. I'm making a few notes on my own list well as we speak.
I think we've dealt with so many teams because we're very big on team developments, especially where teams are struggling to work together or in conflict. And you get together, and then there's a few things that goes on, but then you get to the little crux of something, and all this emotional resentment and anger that sits in the team purely comes from people not being responsive. So, hey, please will you execute on this? And I'm using as an example, like, please will you send this document to the client? And the receiving person then never responds back to say on it or done.
Yes.
And now a week later, I sit, say if it's me and you, I sit with that in the back of my mind the whole time. I know I forgot something is going on, and I'm spending energy on it. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, I never followed up with Deirdre. Deirdre didn't tell me on whether she did it. And now this client is going to be in a mess. Now I email you back, or I send you a late message. And then it's like, why do you message me so late? Of course I would have done it. I'm like, well,
it's a close-off loop because you're not sitting in that environment.
Yeah. So just those things. And then the more it happens, the more people get upset, they get frustrated, and then they start getting resentment. And then one small other thing that the person does adds to that iceberg.
And then it explodes.
Exactly. Yeah. So these things are psychological contracting on how we are being with one another. How are we doing things together online? It's crucial.
Helene, it's been such a great conversation. I know I could have so many more questions around it, because it's such a new area for all of us as we navigate it. But maybe if you just want to tell us a little bit about Credo Growth, what services you offer, and also your book, Mediocrity.
Yeah, so I think Credo, I think the trendy word these days to use is a growth consultancy. And we really focus on 3 pillars in terms of helping clients to grow their businesses. The one pillar is very much around the things that we spoke today, which is culture, it's people growth. So anything to do with that, like leadership, kind of expanding your leadership pipeline, culture, personality profile, especially team developments. Then we've got the business growth, which is around supporting clients in strategic thinking and execution planning, that 90-day plans.
Yes.
The scaling up methodologies. And then we've got the sales consulting and sales training leg.
Okay, great.
And those things are the 3 elements that's really needed in order to grow your business. That's kind of fundamentally what we do. And when clients come to us, we really do a deep dive discovery session with them to understand what is currently the challenges, why the challenges exist, and then look at what it is that they want to achieve. And then we design the journey for them. Yes, we've got a few off-the-shelf like leadership journeys like that, but most of our work are between a 6-month, 12-month, and 18-month collaboration together with the client to grow, whether it's culture development or strategy and execution planning. And we love it. The work that we do with our clients, it's fun, it's great, and we see the impact that we have.
And you see the result, which is very gratifying.
Which is always
awesome. We'll include a link in there. And tell me about your book and who should be considering. I think everyone, every
So I actually had high school students coming to me and say, "Thank you, my mom gave me your book and it's so amazing." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, I'm very happy." And basically the comment was, "We should learn this in school." So I'm very happy about that. But yeah, it's I actually have a copy right here. It's Ditch Mediocrity. And
love the title. It's so catchy.
It was going to be another word, mediocrity. You can just imagine what word it would have been. I actually had the front cover designed with it. And Richard Mulholland, who's a dear friend and also a mentor of mine, he looked at me and he said, "So if my 16-year-old daughter sees that, you know that in her head, she's going to read exactly that. And I have 8-year-old twin girls." And I'm like, and then the word came out of my mouth. I'm like, I can't do that.
No. I actually think the Ditch Mediocrity. I know when you were in one of the groups we were in, and you introduced your book, it really stuck. That title really stuck. So I think you landed on the right title.
I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad I changed the ditch from what it was. But it really is. It's 12 chapters. It's 95 pages. It's tiny, but it's 12 chapters of tools that leaders can use to develop high-performing teams, to create engaging cultures that leads to high performance. And what I do is I take, because there's many tools that we work with at Credo, but I took the 12 tools that I think is the easiest for someone else who's not in our skill set to understand the tool and to do it themselves with their teams.
Okay, excellent.
So it's some older tools that has been around for a while, but I take the tool and I make it practical, and it's about describing what's going on with the tool and then say, and by the way, here is how you implement it.
Okay.
Where I think a lot of the times the tools are out there, but no one explains what you do with the tool. It's all very theoretical.
Definitely.
I took it from theory to practical, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, totally. So we'll also put a link to that. And I downloaded my Amazon copy. I'm still busy reading, so I didn't want to make any comment.
Nice.
in between everything else, because high-performing teams lead to high-performing business. And if you get the practical tools, that's great. And for people who maybe are not in the bracket of obviously growth consultancy, this is a great way of starting that process.
And that's exactly why I wrote it, because not every business can afford external facilitators to come in. And my fundamental belief is that every single person who works in a business has the right to work in a really amazing place.
Yes.
So that's kind of partly why we've published it and put it out there.
And I'll put all the links in the bottom. So anyone who wants to follow through on that, I know you did great work. And all the best with all of those team interventions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we love doing it. So at least it's a job that we all enjoy and look forward to.
I can see.
Amazing. Thank you, Deirdre. I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Cool. Thanks. Cheers.